from the depth instant tutorial.
CRAM cannon turrets. Let's make our own decent prefab. First thing to select is what size of turret we will do. And to help us with this, we go down to sub-objects, and here we have turret templates. So we're going to spawn this little material piece here. The alloy inside of this little well will be the size our turret can have and not stick out of this to be able to fit within this well on our hull. So basically we spawn this to be able to understand that our turret needs to fit on this little area where the alloy is, and it will be a perfectly professional, nice fit. Here you can find different one turret axes. We will select the one that's most suitable for our turret size. For this turret I will select a 3x3 turret base. And you can see this little marking, it marks the front of the block. The bigger they are, the more health they will have, and it also has more speed if the turret is heavy to turn sideways. First thing I want to do after this is to connect it up to the AI, and I already have an AI with decent detection on this build. And to do this we need a local weapon controller. I spawn it right on this turret block. Then we also need a failsafe, which goes into the local weapon controller. And we of course also need a wireless receiver to be able to connect up to the AI. And now this turret block is controlled by our AI. And now you should be most welcome to one of the finest sports in From Depth, namely CRAM Tetris. The 6-way connector connects stuff together, and the packers, well, they put in cool pellets into your shots. The automatic orientation is pretty shit, so you'll have to learn how to use the manual orientation. And basically, we have a couple of suction cups. These can connect up to a 6-way connector. And then we have these little ports with caution tapes on them. All of these ports can connect to a high explosive or hardener pellet or whatever you choose. These payload packers, well, they connect up to pellets. We have high explosive frag EMP hardener pellets. We also have payload compactors. All of these connect to these payload packers. To explain a CRAM cannon the most simple way, you can think of a CRAM shell as a bucket. And to be able to fire, you need to fill up the bucket to the desired amount. And to fill it up faster, you'll need more fillers. The payload packers, they are the fillers. And the pellets, they are the material that you fill them with. However, these material sources, i.e. pellets, they are basically inexhaustible. And what really matters for filling the bucket up is how many connections to pellets you have. So when we put it like here, you can see that 2 of these payload packers share this connection. And well, you can make them, share connections on all 6 sides. So the reason you want to connect up your pellets to as many payload packers as possible, it is to be more space efficient, and also you can see these cost 150 each, except this one which costs 120. So they're pretty expensive, and you want to keep their amount to as low as possible for, space saving and also cost saving. Having pellets connected up to only one payload packer will not give you any type of bonus, only less efficiency. And even worse if you connect up the pellets like this only to one of these, the CRAM firing piece. It's not very efficient. So moving back to the fine sport of CRAM Tetris on this turret here, you can see I've started to build a Tetris shape which I'm trying to make them share as many connections as possible. And to make my building a lot simpler, since we're building from bottom up, we click just backspace, and I can now place blocks in midair like this. And of course they will fall down as soon as we just play the game normally, but as long as we're building this, they will stay there very nicely. So I will continue build up to the height which I require for this turret and try to do my little Tetris. And remember, the suction cups, they go to the 6-way connectors, and the sticking out ports, they go to pellets. In the gaps where we will put pellets, well, you can choose any pellet to put in there, because you can easily change this later. I am sandwiching this thing for increased durability, as you can see here. And if you're unsure if you can fit blocks inside of here, click P and you'll see the miniature, and it will be much easier to check out. As you probably have been noticing when building, everything is glowing red, and this is because we don't have a firing piece. So connect up all loose ends, go into the CRAM menu and find the firing piece. Click G on the direction, which is front on your turret, and place it down. The entire thing should now light up blue to show that it's connected. Click P and make sure that everything indeed is connected, so that you haven't made a mistake. Now there are a couple of parts that you probably want. One thing is the fusing box. And the fusing box you connect up to a 6-way connector or directly to your firing piece. And if you click Q on this, you can select a type of fuse. And you will want a type of fuse in order for your shell to always explode on contact. You can select several fuses if you want to, but I highly recommend you to only choose one. Having many will significantly weaken your shell. A good all-around fuse to choose is inertial, explode on angle change. Let's create the barrel. There are normal and heavy barrels. The heavy barrels, they have better health and armor, but are also heavier, and they make the aiming slower. So I wouldn't recommend you to go all out with the heavy barrels, but you can have a couple of them close to the firing piece to also protect the firing piece a little bit better. If we look at the barrel here, you can see that the firing piece has a default aiming capability of 35 degrees elevation and azimuth. Having an elevation barrel will make it instead aim 25 in the azimuth and 45 in elevation. And if you add another one, you can see that these numbers change even more. If you see the text here, you can see that the barrel rotation speed is almost 3 degrees per second, which is pretty slow. But if we add motor barrels, you can see that this number is drastically increasing. And the longer the barrel is, the more accurate it will be. These normal barrel pieces will make it much more accurate pretty easily. So basically, the shorter the barrel is, the faster you can spin around it and aim at your target, and the longer they are, the more accurate they are. So you have to kind of have a good middle ground there. And also there is a barrel called recoil suppression. If you have problems with recoils on your craft, you will probably need a couple of these ones to decrease the recoil, but this will also give you some bad stuff because the shell speed will also decrease. We probably want to determine what kind of gauge we want to have. The default gauge is 1000 millimeter. And that is pretty fat, but we can make it twice as fat if we want to. Alright, so the gauge increasers, they come in all these different pieces and they have the same stats, so it's only aesthetical reasons you choose them. And they protect about as well as metal, but they're a little bit better and they can connect into each other. So they're a pretty decent protection. So you can do like this, and now you can see we have 1550 as a gauge. You can add more of them as well, because if you happen to run out of these, i.e. they are destroyed, you might want to have a couple of backups going on there so that your gauge will stay the same. And there we are. We have a diameter of 2000. It's very fat. But I will now go in here and we can go to CRAM settings, and we can set maximum gauge to, I think, 1550 was absolutely decent. Now we only need to reconfigure the shell and of course armor this turret. So we begin with just putting a little bit on armor on this thing, and you want your turret to stick out over its hole here. You can see the shape here. You remember we built on this alloy and make it fit inside, and it will be able to spin around freely in this shape, which is outlined with metal here. Now we want to actually cover this metal outline sticking out there so that our turret will actually be protected below, so nothing can get in between. And if we do that, they will lay flush and it will be completely protected. The barrel, well, you can actually basically lock it in as much as you want. It will still be able to move through the thing. So if you click P here, you can see it's only a 1x1 hole it's going through, and that's absolutely fine. It will not limit this type of turret's movement at all, so don't worry about that. And as you can see, I made a little cylinder turret, and I would say there are two ways to make turrets good here. One way is to make it compact, small and very angled so that shells will bounce off. The other way is to do it like this, and that is to have a lot of free space inside it. Now, the firing piece is the absolutely most important block on this build, so we will actually want to surround the firing piece with heavy armor, but we also want to have free space in between so we can put some applique panels or other spall lining there. So let me just do that. And there we have the heavy armor, and now a lot of applique panels in there. So let's close this off. And there we have it, a turret, armored and everything. Let us just try this turret out and see if it even works. Seems to be working fine. Also, if you for some reason don't want your turret to shoot your craft, and if it has a tendency to do that despite the failsafe, well, what you do is you go into this little block here, which is the one-axis turret. Click Q and enable extra constraints. Then you can check this box and you get this green markers here, and you can move them around here, max anti-smooth, and basically set limits. So how do we reconfigure this shell? Well, click Q, and now we can go into reconfigure. So we have 100 HI pellet, and that's decent enough, but maybe not what we want to. So the first thing we can do here is to change, maybe we want it to be frag. So apply to turret. Now it tries to rearrange them in order to have these many HI and these many frag. So it's mostly frag now. And if we do that again and click apply to turret, well, then it's suddenly only high explosives. So for this one, I think we'll go with a little bit of hardener and mostly high explosive. And we click apply to turret, and now some of them are indeed hardeners instead. And now we can see that the time between shots at 100% packing is 7 seconds. If we go to CRAM settings, we can also set it to fire at only 50% packing. This will result in that our reload time will be cut in half, and also our shell strength will be cut in half as well. I usually recommend to have you 100 packing. If you for some reason would like to have a fast firing CRAM cannon, well, then you can have it like to 10% packing and you can make them go pretty fast. But back to loadout. Then we can go with payload compactor, and if we have a little bit of payload compactors, you can see that the reload speed really increased. And the payload compactor, if we imagine that the CRAM shell is a bucket, well, the payload compactor makes the bucket bigger. It basically makes your shell stronger, bigger, which means it also takes longer time to fill up with the pellets you require. So, well, if you want more powerful shells, you want a little bit of payload compactors. Anyways, I think that this setup, 11 seconds for this size of turret, is pretty good reload speed, I think. So, let's say I'm completely happy with this turret now as it is, well, then I should save it. And to do that, we'll build a little bit on it, and we click E, and we go to sub-objects mode. And here we can save the sub-object you are currently building on, which is this one. So we will name this tutorial and click save. And it's a smarter idea if you name it something like 7x7, because this is the size of the turret. Okay, and now you can load and spawn in your turret wherever you want, if you, for example, would like to have more of them. If you did enjoy this tutorial, please do subscribe for future instant tutorial. This has been your host, Jimodesm, signing out.